Hello, everyone. This is the beginning of the Association for Vertical Farming AVFaward Webinar 1, all about site selection. So we're going to give you a little bit of time to join in so we can build up our viewers. We are live here, and we have some special guests with us, including Max Loessl, co-founder of the Association for Vertical Farming. I'm also a co-founder of the Association for Vertical Farming. My name is Henry Gordon-Smith. We have Kelly Wilson joining us from Illumitex, one of the sponsors and the main sponsor of the AVFaward, and we have Paul Hardej joining us from Illumitex. This webinar will be recorded live and available on the Association for Vertical Farming YouTube page. You can also find it on some of our partner blogs like agritecture.com and the Illumitex blog once it's completed. So I see we got some more viewers coming here. Thanks for joining on. And we're about to get started on talking about site selection, and then we'll answer some questions about the AVFaward. We know we've been receiving a lot of questions about how to enter your team and your mission, so we'll get started about that soon. First, a little bit about the competition and why we're doing this. Vertical farming is a new and emerging technology. It's a very exciting way that we can grow large amounts of food in indoor environments near the cities that consume them. The Association for Vertical Farming's mission is to bring together all the industry players and educate about vertical farming. And so we were so excited when Illumitex came to us with the idea of sponsoring a global award to inspire young people to design vertical farms. So that's what this challenge is all about. It's about you conceiving of a unique idea for vertical farming, the design of that, the business of that, what crops you're going to grow. And what we're going to be talking about today is where your vertical farm is going to be. And that's a really important variable to consider. So to begin with, I'm going to introduce our special guest today, Paul Hardej. Paul Hardej is the VP of Horticulture at Illumitex Lighting Solutions. He applies his vast experience in developing and managing vertical farms to Illumitex's turnkey lighting solutions program, while also running the company's marketing efforts. He's also a co-founder of Farmed Here, one of the first vertical farms in North America and one of the largest. He serves as Chief Technology Officer and Development Officer at the Innovation Area Vertical Farm, Farmed Here. Hardej developed this first organic certified vertical aquaponic farm in the US, designing multi-level indoor aquaponic and hydroponic grow systems with LED grow lights. Paul Hardej is an architect. He studied architecture at Warsaw's Polytechnic University and at the School of Architecture at University of Detroit. He also studied interior design and merchandising at the International Academy of Merchandising and Design in Chicago. Prior to becoming involved in urban agriculture, he designed and developed many award-winning real estate projects, including restaurants, offices, and multifamily housing. So there you go. I mean, I don't know a better person to really talk about site selection than Paul Hardej. So without further ado, we're going to hear a little bit from Paul about his experience at Farmed Here and some of the basics and best practices for selecting your site. So Paul Hardej.
Wonderful introduction, Henry. Thank you so much, and pleasure to join you guys today on this beautiful Sunday day from Austin, Texas. So welcome everybody. We're super excited, first of all, about the number of potential entries and candidates and groups that are joining this competition. I'm going to talk a little bit about the idea for the competition first before I talk about site selection. As Henry mentioned, I'm an architect, and you know, being an architect is really a fun job, a very challenging profession. But architects, just like a lot of other designers, are very proud of their work, and they're artists, and they go and challenge each other with, you know, best design ideas and so forth. So architects have awards. Architects get awards. There is an architectural award called Pritzker Award. It's an international competition for architects from all over the world in all kinds of categories. So when I was thinking about vertical farming and realized, you know, how close it is to my heart as an architect, and in respect to design and challenges of, you know, urban settings and zoning and regulations and the overall economics of the farm, I said, well, really, there's so much thought that has to go into this process, and obviously architects and engineers are getting involved. How about we really stimulate this environment and come up with some kind of recognition for people who work very, very hard on coming up with these, you know, either theoretical or actual applications and designs. So that's how we created the idea. We reached out to Association for Vertical Farming last year. and Illumitex proposed the concept of maybe we can sponsor an award and just encourage people to really submit real applications and real designs and create this fantastic process. And I'm so grateful, Henry, and the entire team for accepting this idea and running with it. I think we're all just super excited, and this is the first time we're doing it. So we're all learning. So excuse me if we make any mistakes today, but it's just amazing. And the response today was truly amazing. So I'm honored to be here. So, let me get going on what does it mean to, what was my experience and what does it really mean from my perspective, at least, to develop an urban vertical farm. One of the first challenge that I found that to overcome was lack of regulations. And as an architect with a lot of experience building and designing buildings, I can tell you that farming is not a well-defined term in urban settings. So most metropolitan areas around the world either lack regulations on farming or simply do not allow farming, because obviously farming has been defined in a traditional sense as open field, food production, or animal production process. And a lot of architects, urban planners, early on in 1940s or 50s, when most of zoning codes have been developed in countries like US or Canada or Western Europe, defined agriculture in a traditional sense. So obviously, in an urban setting with a lot of industrial and density and all other challenges, people decided, well, farming is not something we want to do, correct? So, and these regulations were put in place decades ago and kind of forgotten. So now we as a new emerging industry, we're coming into this environment where the whole idea of vertical farming is to grow food where people live, correct? So in urban centers. And we all agree on that premise. Now we go into an urban center with a great idea. We say, hey, we're going to grow local foods. We're going to create jobs and put vacant buildings to work. And we're expecting, as real estate developers, or vertical farm developers, we're going to be received with open arms. And yeah, generally speaking, regulators and administrators and city officials are excited about the idea. But the minute they start looking at zoning codes and building codes, they realize, whoops, we have a major problem here. So the biggest challenge, really, in my opinion, is still education and policy. There needs to be a lot of policy work, and that's what we focused on very early on at Farm Here, reaching out to communities and governments and city governments. I was just very lucky to be invited to sit on Mayor Daley's task force in Chicago on vertical farming. This goes back in 2009, 2010, where the city of Chicago, with its rich history of urban farming, recognized that we need to update our regulations. And so that process took a while, and it was very challenging, even though the government was very supportive of the idea of urban farming and trying to redefine it in a common sense that really applies to all kinds of restrictions that need to be addressed in zoning and building codes, but at the same time, how do we incorporate this new technology? How do we define the technology, and how do we educate, either regulators or building code administrators about what vertical farming is about? So that kind of started this whole process of discussing zoning codes. Chicago was one of the first cities that amended its zoning code, and then there were some amendments to building codes. And then we realized we also need to amend business licensing regulations and so forth to really define a new category of business that hasn't been done before. A lot of cities followed or had their own processes. So I think generally speaking, based on what I know, most of major metropolitan areas in the U.S. currently or Canada have regulations that are defining urban farming in some sense, have zoning regulations that are more, more, I would say, welcoming to this type of business. But a lot of work needs to be done still. And I think it's because also we as an industry, we're new, correct? So we are all creating vertical farms and building them. And in the process, we're defining actually what vertical farms are going to be. From the vision that Dixon has created, and Dixon Dispomier and others early on, obviously these grander visions and ideas are fantastic, but at the end of the day, the industry, for its economics and technical aspects of how to implement this technology into growing in cities, will redefine what the vertical farm actually is going to be. And part of that redefinition, I would call it, really comes from working with governments and regulators on the zoning side, on building code side, workers' safety, environmental issues, and so forth. So I really, as an architect, it was really interesting when I started Farm Here in 2009. As an architect, I thought this is going to be the easiest part of my job, you know, to find a building or site, to design the farm, to get my building permits and approval, and manage the construction process. I thought, okay, this is going to be a piece of cake. All the other things are going to be really complicated, correct? The technology, the growing process, regulations on food safety, and so forth. Well, I was way wrong, because it turns out even as an architect with almost a couple decades of experience in real-life construction and project management and design, I still found all these challenges that I was talking about a few minutes ago that relate to regulations. But also, at the end of the day, we were, as I mentioned, we were still defining what a vertical farm is going to be and how the economic model is going to be. So have we made the best choice possible, being in a 90,000 square foot building in Chicago? It's not a bad choice. Is this the right building? Is it an ideal building? Well, you know, the time will tell, and this industry is evolving. So people call me all the time and ask questions about, Paul, how to select the site. And it really is a very difficult question to answer, because it goes around, you know, what is the building, what is the growing technology, what is the growing process that you're going to deploy. It has a huge impact on what site to select as well. So that's my brief introduction. It took a long time, by the way, guys, just so you know. Getting the approvals done for farm here took a long time, despite the fact that we had a very, very supportive government and very supportive regulators and building inspectors. Because the regulatory environment in cities is multi-layered. There's cities, then we have county, sometimes township and county, and state regulations and federal regulations. You know, it's a very multi-layer regulatory environment, and it was a challenging process. Anyway, I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm just letting you guys know it's not a piece of cake as much as I thought or imagined as an architect it's going to be. So.
Thank you, Paul Hardej, for that explanation. I'm just going to mute you for a second because of a bit of feedback. So yeah, super valuable to learn about the experience of farmed here. You know, really spearheading the way and trailblazing vertical farming in North America and the world. You know, Paul talked about some of the importance of exploring policy and zoning issues, and we'll get into that a little bit. We've added the link for farmed here if you want to check them out and get some more information about that project, its size, its scale, what they're growing. I'm going to ask Paul some questions about selecting a site, but first, just to frame it in the context of this competition, what we're trying to do here is to really mentor you and to lead you to really understanding how you can set up vertical farms through this challenge. So we're going to start with the first milestone, which is setting up your team, which we're accepting those milestones up until tomorrow, April 4th. And then the next milestone is going to be your site selection, where you're going to have to actually provide a snapshot of the site you chose. You could take a screenshot on Google Earth or a picture of the site from the outside. We're going to want to know the dimensions of the site. We're going to know the city and the country of the site, and we're going to know your reason why, about a 300-word description or less on why you chose that site. So think about that as you get there, and then you're going to have a little bit of information about choosing your crops from Rebecca Knight in our next webinar. So now we have the site, now we're going to get into the crops, and then we're going to get into the economics of that. You're going to have to submit some economics about what you're going to grow and how much you're going to make from that and the costs of that vertical farm. Finally, we're going to ask you to present a design, a concept, a drawing, or some visual of your vertical farm. So that's the process between now, starting April 4th, after that milestone 1 submission, all the way until the end of the competition in May. To see the full timeline, you can look at award.vertical-farming.net. So now let's get back to talking about farmed here and site selection. So Paul, in New York City, you know, I was doing some work with Dixon DePalmier designing a concept vertical farm, and we found that kind of light manufacturing zoned areas were a good choice for a vertical farm. I'm just trying to unmute you here. What do you think about that? And did you find something similar in Chicago? What kind of zoning is where farmed here is? Sorry, you're just on mute. I gotta.
Are you still muted?
Yeah, we hear you now.
So, Henry, thanks for this question. I would not look at it the way you looked at it, because, see, the existing zoning classifications, if you look at zoning codes in general, correct, they have different use groups, and use groups are defined like M for manufacturing, or R for residential. There could be different acronyms and different names in different cities. But basically what the urban planners are trying to do is they're trying to define different land uses within the fabric of the city. So they're trying to say, we're going to plan ahead, decades ahead, and we're going to allocate space within the city structure, and we're going to tell people what they need to do there, correct? They need to live there or work there, have office buildings or manufacturing facilities or whatever else it may be, or retail establishments. So when you look at existing zoning regulations, again, as I said early on, typically they do not define urban agriculture as a land use, okay? What you will find, as Henry, you pointed out, in New York City, you'll find some kind of zoning classifications for manufacturing. And then under this particular classification, there might be subcategories that define different types of activities or intensity of activity in manufacturing use groups. So, for example, you have heavy manufacturing, which might be polluting, environmentally concerned, and noisy and busy. You might have medium manufacturing or light manufacturing processes, which are usually storage facilities or light labor, not that intensive operations. So, but if you look at these groups and you start reading the language on what it really means and how the building code defines that use, you're going to typically find that agriculture is not there. So what I'm trying to say is, light manufacturing might be a perfect fit, you think, because it defines buildings that are designed or allowed to have some kind of a process of making things inside the building. It defines parking and for employees and some other environmental and volume constraints, because that's basically what zoning talks about, is volume and land use, correct? So the size of the building and the use of the building. So anyway, so what I'm trying to say is, yes, light manufacturing is a great choice. We found that in Chicago that light manufacturing was probably the most compatible zoning category. And actually, the way that the zoning code was rewritten in Chicago, we incorporated, urban agriculture or hydroponics or aquaponics or aeroponics, multi-layer or recirculating grow systems into light manufacturing. But what I'm trying to say is, Henry, it may not be the answer in every city. I'm sure that Paris or Berlin or Toronto might have different regulations, and preferably a different zoning classification might be the best one to use.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for that. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Sorry, just some connectivity issues.
I can hear you, Henry.
Okay. Okay, super. So my next question. My next question is a little bit about the interior of the farm and how picking the right building can help you really kind of design a good interior for that, the number of layers, etc. To our audience, we are going to be accepting questions from you and answering them, Paul and I. So you can ask those questions in the Google Hangout Q&A box, or you can ask us on Twitter using hashtag AVFaward. Okay, so Paul, when you're picking a vertical farm space, like a warehouse space especially, how important is the height in there? We've seen some vertical farms that can be 4 or 5 layers. Some people are putting them in containers. Some people are putting them in facades. But let's talk about the warehouse model, the kind of indoor warehouse model. What kind of height ranges would you be looking for when you're picking a site?
Okay, it's a very specific question, Henry. So maybe let's step back for a little bit. And when you look at any building, okay, is it a warehouse or an office building or an abandoned school building, whatever it may be that you may want to convert into a vertical farm, you have to look at 3 different constraints or 3 different areas of concern. One is physical, something that you're talking about, the size of the building, the height of the building, the dimensions of the building. You have to look at environmental issues, correct, with the building. If you're converting an existing warehouse, what are the environmental conditions of the facility? Is there any existing contamination, for example? How old is the building? And I'll get to this in a minute. Then you look at regulations, something that we talked about. Okay, is there a use that's allowed in the facility, and how is that going to apply? Because the regulations will impact not only the use, but will also impact your design, and design from all kinds of aspects: fire safety, communication, worker safety, and so forth. But also, you have to look at this from the economical point of view. So when you consider a warehouse, and if you brought this example, great, we can talk about it. You know, post-industrial building, big box, say, you know, 30, 40, 50,000 square feet, 10,000 meters or 1,000 meters or whatever it may be, you know, you have to look at the economical impact of, you know, the height of the growing process, for example. So when you're asking about that, really, number one, we need to start looking at your growing technology. What is the growth system that you're going to deploy in this building? How intense is it going to be? And do you really need the height? Because the height is beneficial, let's say, from the vertical farming point of view. We all agree we want to grow multiple layers. Could be multiple layers of growing surfaces, could be multiple floors of a building. The whole idea is to use expensive piece of real estate in the city, which is much more expensive than a rural area, and go up, just like condominium buildings or hotels or office buildings where real estate developers take advantage of the airspace and they really economically squeeze every dollar they can out of the piece of land, correct? So it's the same premise. But when you look at the height of the growth systems and the height of the building, you also have to think about the volume that the whole building contains. Now, the volume is really air, correct? And you're trying to fill this air with growth systems, but then you need to condition this air. What we're doing is controlled environment agriculture, so by definition, we're trying to create an environment that's controlled. So when we're controlling volume, the bigger the volume, the more controls we need to have. So that's basically what I'm trying to say. That there is no easy answer. It's a balance between the type of technology that you want to use and the productivity that you need to achieve from the design of your growth systems, balanced against the volume of space that you want to control. And there is a direct correlation to the design of the control systems, obviously cost of the control systems. Is it air conditioning, dehumidification systems, CO2 and things like that? But obviously it has a huge impact on your down the road operating costs of the farm and ultimately the cost of your crops. Henry, are you there?
It seems like Henry dropped out, Paul, so it would be awesome if you could just explain the next step that you would take.
Okay, the next step after looking at the volume or the size of the building. So
exactly.
Yeah, okay, fine. So let's pick a scenario here, and let's say we are looking at a post-industrial building in New York City, correct? That's built in 1940s and is concrete and was vacant for 5 years. I'm just throwing an example. I'm really making it up right now. So things that I would look at from the beginning, as I said, is physical condition of the building. We need to understand if the building is sound structurally, correct? So a developer of that building, is it, you know, if you're developing it into condominiums or whatever, you know, you're changing the use, you need to conduct what's called environmental study. An engineering study where you would hire a structural engineer who's going to go and walk through the building and see if it's structurally sound, number one. Number two, you would conduct an environmental assessment, something I mentioned earlier, to see if that building contains any contaminants from the past. I mean, regulations have addressed a lot of this, but a lot of old buildings, for example, have lead paint or asbestos in pipe insulation and so forth, or underground utility tanks with heating oil. So because we're developing a food facility, we're developing a farm, we need to make sure that from the beginning, you know, you guys are realizing that you need to bring your facility to the highest standard from the environmental point of view and food safety point of view. So, you know, so that's an important one. And then obviously, as I mentioned, you look at regulatory environment and the economics of, you know, how much does it cost and so forth. We'll talk about it down the road, I'm sure.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Paul. Sorry, I got disconnected for a bit, but thank you for that explanation. We've got some questions coming in. I'm going to ask one more, and then we'll start getting into these questions, so keep them coming. Paul, how important is it when you're selecting the site to be close to the customer? You know, like how important is it that you're near the buyers of the product when the context of vertical farm? Is it kind of more important to pick a place that's got low rent and is affordable? Is it more important to pick a place that's close to transportation routes, highways, trains, whatever? Or do you really want to be close to the market? Tell us a little bit about that decision.
Yeah, you raised some good points, Henry. I mean, you have to consider it all, correct? So, but just the mere fact that any vertical farm or urban farm is going to be hundreds, if not thousands of miles or kilometers closer to a consumer than a traditional farm, correct? So we're so much better off. I don't believe we need to be within few miles from a consumer, correct? So just being in the metropolitan area and being able to be, number one, in the same time zone. Let's start with that. A lot of farms are in different time zones, correct?
True.
From 2 hours, different time zone, geographical location, obviously, and so forth. So we're already growing within that environment or urban setting or metropolitan area where people live. So I don't think you need to be super close to your consumer. What's really important is the cost of real estate. Okay, transportation, which means infrastructure, highways or roads, or how quickly can you, move around the city and really access your facility, access your farm. What does it mean for your drivers to make deliveries or for your workers to come to work, correct? And also you should be located in an area, speaking of workers and farmers, that has some kind of, proximity to an urban residential setting where you have people who are looking for jobs. Ideally, there's some public transportation where you can create some entry-level jobs as well for people to advance their careers through urban farming and vertical farming, and obviously those many cities would like to use public transportation. So these things are more important, in my opinion, than proximity to a customer. So if you can find a site that's 5 or 10 or 20 miles away, but has a lower rent, has good access to highways and main roads, has access to public transportation, and is in good proximity to your potential workforce, and on top of it you have friendly government with friendly regulations, I would go for that versus being as close as possible to my customer.
Okay, thanks. So we're going to take this first question from Gus Quaid. The question is relating to the competition a bit itself, but also connected to the site. It's what are the budget limitations for our proposed design? So I'll answer that from the competition perspective, and maybe Paul, you can talk a little bit about some of the costs we might be looking at there at a rough perspective. From the competition perspective, it's a little bit of a difficult thing when we were deciding, because there really are so many different types of vertical farms. You could have kind of small scale, 1,000 square foot to 5,000 square foot, kind of mom and pop style vertical farms, to large scale ones that are growing large amounts of produce, maybe at wholesale prices where the costs are going to be much larger. So what we're going to be looking for, what the judges are going to be looking for, is how you justify the scale of your farm. And when you propose the economics of that, you're going to have to present some rough economics on the capital costs and the operational costs. So obviously, if you propose an enormous vertical farm in downtown Manhattan that costs billions of dollars, it's going to be hard for the judges to say, okay, well, selling food out of a vertical farm that's in Manhattan, competing with real estate prices for commercial and rental prices, it's probably not gonna work. So those are the decisions you need to think about. And really, it's about making that case and showing the judges that you've thought about it and that you can justify your choice. But otherwise, there's no limit on the size and the total budget of your project. Paul, anything you want to share regarding that?
Yeah, I would like to add to that at least in my opinion, Henry, I hope you and I and the rest can agree on this, financing or cost should not be the limiting factor. I think the premise of this competition is to inspire creativity, we're not sitting here to tell you guys how to develop a vertical farm, how to replicate what Farm Here or others have done. We're really looking for next wave of ideas and next wave of creativity. Financing is a limiting factor. So what you mentioned, Henry, $1 billion farm downtown Manhattan, on the surface, from the economical point of view, if you have unlimited access to capital, sure, it might be feasible because it's at scale. Obviously, productivity increases and your costs go down and so forth. But is it realistic? So we need to focus on solutions that are clever, creative, and realistic to some extent. So that would be the best advice I can give you guys. If you're planning your farm now and you're looking at the site selection and economic model, think about, is it realistic? Small is great. Small and cute and productive and efficient is great. There's nothing wrong with that. Large farms could be very efficient, but are they realistic? So we're in 2016. We're not asking you guys to design a farm that's going to be built in 2050. We really want to encourage this industry to grow very fast and rapidly. So we are looking for solutions that are realistic.
Okay, great. So before we get into our next question, we're going to ask Kelly Wilson from Illumitex to just share a few resources from some cities albeit mostly in the West, but this is a global competition, but just some ideas and some resources that might help you with milestone 1. So Kelly, do you want to introduce yourself and just spend a little time on that? Let me unmute you, sorry. You got to just unmute.
I think Kelly might have to unmute herself. That's why.
Right, let me see.
There we go.
Okay, I'm back. Okay, so my name is Kelly Wilson. I work at Illumitex, and I am the social media specialist. So I've put together some resources that might help you along the way. First, for New York City, 596 Acres offers a lot of different resources, different ideas that maybe you can go off of, ways to kind of choose your site selection. For Boston, there is herb.ag, which is, I've provided the link, it's https://farm.fathom.info. They offer kind of the whole entire area for Boston that you can kind of go through, choose your site. It will include information on those specific areas. There's also different universities that will help you along the way, agricultural extensions. So some examples of that would be Purdue, Texas A&M, which is right here in Texas, Cornell from my hometown in New York, and the University of Arizona, where Paul Hardej and Rebecca Knight just actually took a course at. So definitely check University of Arizona out. For people that are from California, there's many resources in California. Community Health Consoles in Los Angeles. They have a partner with Open Acres. And then there's also from Lot to Spot, which is also in LA. From lot2spot.org is their website. And then in Los Angeles, again, they have the Neighborhood Land Trust, Collective Roots, which is in Palo Alto, San Francisco Parks Alliance. And then for those of you in Chicago, there's Open Lands, Neighbor Space. And then in Louisiana, there's New Orleans Food and Farm Network, which is also partnered with Living Lots New Orleans. In Michigan, they have Michigan Community Resources. And in Detroit, they have the Food Security Network. In Maine, they have Lots to Gardens. Maryland, Baltimore Green Space, Community Law Center's Urban Agriculture Law Project. In Mass, they have the Boston Food Project. And then kind of going back to urbanag.com. New York, there's quite a few. The Vacant Law Project in Albany, New York is a good resource. Partnership for the Public Good in Buffalo, New York. People United Sustainable Housing in Buffalo. Greenprint in Niagara Falls. Grassroots Gardens in Buffalo. And then there's a very good ebook or PDF that kind of goes through just basic urban agriculture, urban farming issues that you might run into at www.greenthumbnewyorkcity.org. And then in Ohio, there's the Cuyahoga Land Bank in Cleveland, Ohio, the Neighborhood Progress in Cleveland. For Oregon, there's a website that I can send you to after this webinar. It offers a lot of different resources in Oregon. In Pennsylvania, there's the Garden Justice Legal Initiative in Philly, Pennsylvania Horticultural Society in Philly, PA, that offers a lot more resources as well. The City of Pittsburgh, their website offers a lot of resources for site selection. GTech Strategies in Pittsburgh, Grow Pittsburgh, and then for those of you that might be outside of the U.S., in Australia, there's 3,000 Acres, which is located in Melbourne.
Hey,
Brazil, there's Green My Favela, if I'm saying that right, in Rio de Janeiro. Cities Without Hunger in Sao Paulo. In Germany, there's, I'm really going to botch this, but it's Princess Garden in Berlin. And then in England, there's Grow Sheffield in Sheffield, England. Love Old Trafford lots in Manchester. Everyday Growing Cultures in Manchester also. And then in Canada, there's London and Montreal. So I have all of these websites for you that I can send to Henry, and he can pass on to all of you after the webinar.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly, for sharing those. I think you covered some really good things there, because when you're looking for your site, you're going to want to look at a couple things. You're going to look at what vertical farms are already happening in your city or in your region, and what can you learn from the sites that they chose, and what could you find that's similar to that. And a lot of those resources that Kelly mentioned are about urban agriculture in many of those cities. So think about reading articles about your city or vertical farms in your city. Also, the other one is going to be kind of answering this zoning question, or what's the right space question. The 596 acres one for New York is a great example of that, because it shows you all the vacant sites in the city, what it's zoned for, what previous uses it has, who the owner is, and actually the whole size of it, the dimensions of it. Now remember, when you present milestone number 2, your site selection, you're going to have to show like a screenshot of what the site is, its dimensions, and really, again, the city it's in. So those are kind of the areas you're going to be looking for based on those resources. So no matter where you are in the world, there should be something that you can grab to for that. Also, check out the Association for Vertical Farming website at vertical-farming.net. We have a map there of most, if not all, of the vertical farms around the world. So you can actually click on them and then visit the website of that company, see how they're growing, what they're doing, and use that as your example so that you can really present something that's feasible, and then build upon it with your creativity. Don't just copy what they're doing, do something unique and different off of that.
It's a great point, Henry, and to add to that, guys, don't forget about making sure that you do your homework on zoning and codes, making sure that you're selecting a site that could be used for vertical farming, or you have a plan on how to address local regulations to make it feasible and make it allowable. But also, don't forget, as far as site selection, don't forget about your realtors. Don't forget about your real estate professional. Even if it's a competition project, it might be very exciting for you to reach out to some real estate company in your town, or even international real estate company on the commercial side, and say, hey, I'm working on this competition. I'm actually not buying the building yet, or the piece of land, but I would like to learn about what's available. A lot of real estate companies do offer free reports, and they would give you reports on what's available in your marketplace, but also would give you reports on costs and availability of land or buildings. So don't be shy, reach out to them, go on their websites. A lot of international real estate companies offer free reports, and this could be very helpful, and actually show you how they quantify real estate, how they describe real estate, and it's probably going to make it easier for you to describe your piece of property that you're going to submit for the competition.
Super.
That's a great idea, and I just want to add quickly one thing. Henry, to the list that Kelly mentioned, we can add all of the real estate plots that are sent to AVF by people that are interested in having vertical farms developed on their land.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah, that's true. So we do get actually sites submitted to us for people that want to develop vertical farms. They're not necessarily wanting to be operators, but they have spaces that they're interested in developing. So that's a good idea. So we'll add a lot of those links and comments on the Google+, on the Facebook page, on the comments to this YouTube video, which will be available afterwards. And you can continue to ask us questions. We're getting some questions coming in now. So again, some of these are going to be about the site selection, some of them will be about the competition. So let's start getting into those. So from Felipe Hernandez, we've got, does the solution you're expecting have to be directed for an industrial production? So that's a good question. You know, we are really kind of leaning towards what we would call kind of commercial applications for this project to kind of equal out the applications that we're getting. However, it's not necessarily a strict rule. So we want to see how you justify that case. So we're not looking for you to design like an at-home system vertical farm. We're looking for designing something that's either growing food on a notable level. It's a farm. So it could be kind of a farm that's on a school, and you could explain that, and it's growing that. But what's the business story behind that? How is that actually going to work and function if you want to make that kind of community impact? If you're more on the commercial, industrial side, that's great. We really need a lot more discussion on that. And especially Illumitex's lights are really designed for those, you know, commercial applications, really getting that plant quality up. And you're going to be getting a lot of information from Rebecca Knight about what the plants need. So I think it's going to be most beneficial if you focus on commercial applications and growing, you know, a lot of food. That doesn't mean it has to be enormous, as I said. There's a lot of these mom and pop small setups that are doing quite well, that are selling to restaurants or selling kind of a premium product, and those can be on the smaller side, 2,000 to 5,000 square feet. So I hope that helps answer your question. Again, we really want to urge you to focus on kind of commercial, but as long as you justify your scale and your reasoning, the judges will consider it. Okay, so I've got my dad here asking a question. Henry, how do we get info about the competition? So Simon Gordon-Smith, you just go to award.vertical-farming.net. We're accepting applications up until tomorrow, April 4th. And all you need to do to enter the application at the beginning is you have to enter your team name, your team mission, and your team members. And we're looking for teams that at least have 3 individuals on them. Now, Dad, you're kind of retired, so you might need to find a student to join your team. Each team has to have at least 1 student that's in school, enrolled in a university program, a college program, or has recently graduated within the past 6 months. And I answered that other question on how many people in the team. We're looking for 3 to 5 members in your team as the participants. And then you can also pursue some advisors. There's a space on there for your advisors. In fact, let's just take a moment to talk about milestone 1. I'm just going to do a bit of a screen share here and show you what we're talking about. So hang on a minute while I play with this technology. Okay. So here on your UNoodle, which is the platform, it should be loading now. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, so when you get in, you have your account and you have your entry details. So this is where I'm going to enter in the name of my project, which is going to be whatever, Eden Vertical Farm, let's call it. Okay, and then I'm going to have my team name, the best team ever. Okay, my mission is going to be something like to grow affordable food for Prague, Czech Republic. That's where my parents live, so I'll do that. Okay, and then you have to list the people on your team. Okay, and this is the number. And then you're going to show short description about your design concept, just like what you're thinking about already. Okay, and then you're going to go down and you're going to click the Save Draft, or Save and Next actually is what you're going to click, so that you can go on to enter your team members, and it's going to send an invitation to them. We'll be adding a link with a video about how to do this after the webinar that our Thought for Food co-organizers helped do. So that's a little bit of a tip on how to do it. So when you apply, it's going to ask you to set up that account for UNoodle, which will manage your competition, and then you can enter in all that information. So you don't have to come up with your whole concept right now. By April 4th, you have to submit your team and your mission and those basic entry points. And then by April 8th, you're going to have to enter in your site selection. So that's how we're kind of getting you prepared and planning that farm. Okay, so we have another question here. What is the overall goal of this competition? Will our team complete our own design at the end of the competition? So the answer of the goal is we want to inspire more people to set up vertical farms. I think Paul and I, we've certainly seen, and Max, we've seen in the past 3 years, this idea of vertical farming has really moved from a movement into the beginnings of an industry. And we really have a really exciting thing that's happening with vertical farms sprouting up around the world. So what we want is we want to get more ideas out there and more entrepreneurs involved in vertical farming. So the purpose of this is really for you to share your vision of vertical farming, to learn from the experts at Illumitex and the Association of Vertical Farming about how to set up your vertical farm, and then actually, if you have the best idea, get a little bit of money to push you and to initiate you so that you can actually get something started with your team. So that's the vision of it, is we actually really want to help more people set up vertical farms and set up new kinds of vertical farms that we maybe haven't imagined yet. So yes, at the end, the final milestone is going to be presenting a vision of your vertical farm. So it's important to find somebody to join your team, and you can add people, again, up till tomorrow, and you can find an advisor maybe to help you out. But you want to present some kind of visual. So that could be a sketch of it. We're going to ask you to do a layout and an elevation, and then some depiction of the farm. Okay? And this is so that the judges can really know, how form follows function with this project. What makes this farm special? You know, what are we seeing in there that's unique? Is it the plants? Is it the lights? Is it the setup? Is it the space itself? And it's really important that you can also kind of sell that idea of what you're developing. It's like any business. If you can't depict it and put it out there, it's going to be hard for people to be convinced by it. So yes, one of those final deliverables is going to be a concept presentation of it. Thank you for that question again, Gus. Okay, any more questions coming up? Please ask us in the Q&A. I'm going to check our Twitter feed with hashtag AVFaward and see if we're getting anything. And any other questions you can ask in the Q&A. Max or Paul, any comments on the competition and what we're trying to see from the contestants? It seems like a lot of our guests are still just trying to see, you know, how do they fit into this and how can they win the prize.
But just hearing some of the questions we're getting, that because this is the first webinar we're really doing right now, people are still asking questions about the competition itself.
Yeah.
So this is something that maybe internally we should discuss at some point in the near future. If people want to come back with more questions about site selection, maybe we will create a second opportunity to respond to some additional questions that might just come in after today's call. One of the things that I really want to point out is when you said, Henry, that vertical farm should be unique. I agree with that, but also at the same time, we're not striving here to just create unique vertical farms. We're trying to encourage people, like you said, to add to this emerging industry with feasible, realistic projects. And one of the biggest criteria for you to meet is going to be: is your site, is your farm a real business? Could it really exist? Is it feasible? Can somebody make money doing it? Is it sustainable from the sustainability point of view, but also from the money point of view? So one of the things I would encourage you guys to look at as you're discussing your sites with your teams is the legal status of the property. So when you come with your proposal, make sure it's realistic. Make sure that in your plan you understand: are you renting a property? Are you buying a property? Are you renting a building? Is it a co-op? Is it a not-for-profit? What is the status of your property that encompasses the entire vertical farm? So make sure you address that question as well.
Okay. So we got another good question here related to that that's come in. The question is, so do we need to look for an existing building or designing our own? So Paul, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I'll be happy to. So I think you can go both ways. You're not going to get any special points, at least from me, for reusing existing building or building new. It's all about creativity and also about your physical location. So think about it in those terms, that you're a real estate developer and you're trying to find a piece of land and turn it into the best use, correct? And your best use in your mind is a vertical farm. So when you're located in a very densely populated city like New York, one of the advice I can give you: probably building a new building is going to be very, very expensive and very time-consuming. And you're going to have to go through a lot of regulations and permitting processes and so forth. So maybe you're better off finding an existing structure, okay? But in some other areas where there is more abundance of land and the cities are more spread out, and you have an opportunity to acquire inexpensive land or lease it, of course, theoretically, maybe you're better off designing a brand new building that will address a lot of issues that potentially you can have with an existing building. I talked about environmental contamination, asbestos, lead paint, structural issues, also just environmental controls. So when you look at existing buildings, they're typically not, especially old industrial buildings, they're not well insulated, for example. So when you have cooling systems in your farms, when you have heat loss to your exterior wall or roof. So you need to look at these things from that perspective. You might be better off building a new building, which on the surface may cost more money than a reuse of an existing structure, but long term will provide additional benefits like lower utility costs, lower cooling costs, a higher level of food safety, and also could actually get you into your finish line faster, because putting up a simple steel building with good insulation might take less time than retrofitting and environmentally remediating an existing post-industrial structure. But again, that depends on your location. You have to make a case, and you have to say, look, I'm downtown Manhattan, or on the outskirts of Toronto, or I'm in Beijing, okay, or wherever you guys are, and this is my real estate world. This is what's going on with property here, and this is why I'm picking this particular solution, new construction versus reuse. You need to explain to us why you arrived at that conclusion.
Exactly. Thanks for that, Paul. Actually, Max, I was wondering if you could take a few minutes, just because we have some new viewers that have joined us, to talk about vertical farming, and how the Association for Vertical Farming is defining it, and some of the multiple ways that it can happen. As you do that, I'm going to be entering, so that our viewers have the link to the AVF integration typology, which is a visual format for understanding the various means we can integrate the buildings. And one of those places in that typology is the building a holistic one, meaning it was built and planned to be a vertical farm, or is it a retrofit, meaning like part of it was converted, or is it a conversion where the whole building, like the whole warehouse, was converted into it? So that visual will help you to think about your approach and the purpose. Sorry, Paul, go ahead.
I just wanted to add to this because you were defining, purpose-built buildings. I also would encourage you guys to look at mixed-use properties. What I mean by mixed use, you might have an opportunity where there is existing housing project or hotel or an office building with retail, and you may want to bring a component of vertical farming and incorporate farming business and farming process into the existing infrastructure. This could be an office campus for a major corporation where they're serving a lot of food to their employees. And so I'm just giving you kind of ideas and examples of being creative with your site. You don't have to go, again, buy expensive piece of real estate downtown Manhattan. You may tap into some exciting real estate opportunity, exciting operations where your vertical farm would really benefit that existing business.
Super. Max?
Yeah, I'm here now. Hi, everyone. So my name is Max. I'm one of the co-founders of the Association for Vertical Farming, as Henry introduced me already. And yeah, so at AVF, the real idea behind it started roughly 3.5 years ago. And it all started with a meeting with Dixon DePommier, who introduced me to Henry, who was back then already working in New York. I was based in the Netherlands, and we really just started kicking ideas off back and forward of what we could do to help this industry. And we basically came to the conclusion together that it would make sense to support everyone and to create synergies and foster collaboration through an internet platform. And that idea turned into AVF, basically. And one of the first things we did was map all existing vertical farming ventures, vertical farms, and universities active in research on the topic of vertical farming. And that map has now grown to show over 250 locations worldwide, actually, where vertical farming is happening today. So for most of you probably know this, but maybe for some of the ones that are a bit newer to the topic, this is not a utopian concept anymore, but it's actually being done. And there are economically viable models, and that's exactly what we want to have as the outcome of this competition. The most realistic proposals are, in my opinion, the most likely ones to win. We don't want utopian concepts that can only be built in the next, 30 to 50 years out. So we're not looking for skyscraper farms in the middle of Manhattan, as Paul said. It's really something that can economically be built today already. And I don't know, Henry, did you share the link that people can? Yeah.
I shared the link on the Spotlight and also on the Google+.
Perfect. So if you
underneath it, but yeah, that's a really great resource to look at.
So some of the things that we've developed with AVF are made open source already. Some of them are still in the works, and they're going to be published throughout the year to keep on helping the industry out, and especially young people and entrepreneurs that want to get active in the field. So if you check out this urban agriculture integration typology that we've developed together with architects, you can see it really helps you as a bit of a guideline of what the important points are to focus on when walking through this conceptualized farm that you're going to develop. So it doesn't have to be a standalone farm in an existing place. It doesn't have to be on an empty real estate plot where you then build on. It can be on top of a building. It can be on the facade of a building. It can be...
It could be under the building, correct?
Yeah. Exactly. It could be under the building.
Vertical farms in London, okay, in tunnels and many basements. So just be creative. And you mentioned the word architect again, and I really, not because I'm an architect, guys, but truly, you're dealing with real estate. You're dealing with buildings, and that's something actually we talked about at the University of Arizona a couple weeks ago at a CEC conference, which, by the way, guys, I strongly encourage you to attend. It's a fantastic event.
Yeah, it's really
good. A lot. I've been there 3 years in a row, and every time I go, I learn from the best scientists in the world on controlled environment. They're very, very good people to work with. So this is exactly what we talked at the University of Arizona. You know, a lot of people come to this space from different backgrounds. Is it, you know, technology people, software people, financiers, investor, or actually a lot of food companies. You know, existing food operations or traditional farmers are looking into developing vertical farms. Now, in some cases, the founders, the operators, don't have experience with real estate and don't have experience with designing or dealing with buildings. So one of the things I would encourage all of your teams to do, all the applicants, is to reach out to architects. You know, talk to architects, talk to engineers, make sure that at least you have somebody who's an architect or somewhat of an architect or designer on your team, somebody from the real estate world who would help you and guide you through the process of, again, selecting the site, underwriting the site, qualifying the site, and ultimately designing your farm.
Super. So yeah, we've got some more good questions coming in here. In regards to that architect comment, I think that is super important, and I think it's the ideal role for one of your advisors. So you can add advisors throughout the workshop, throughout the competition, and it's important to keep them in mind. The advisors don't win the prize money, but they can support you, and it's their way of kind of mentoring you. And it's again a way that you can reach out and get those relationships in your local community for when you actually do set up your vertical farm. So now we have some really good questions coming up here, and some that we've been getting through our competition at vertical-farming.net email as well. So Gus is asking, will anyone outside of our team have ownership or any rights to the intellectual property of our final design after we submit our final project? Now, this is a competition which is global and open. It's about sharing ideas, and it's about collaborating. The collaboration that's mainly happening is that you, as the contestant, is collaborating with us, the Association of Vertical Farming and Illumitex. We're going to be providing you with information and mentorship. The first step is just kind of guiding you through the steps of planning your vertical farm. That's what the milestones are for, and actually helping you understand what are some resources you can use to access that and to develop it. It's a way of encouraging you also with the prize money to develop that. The concept itself will be out there publicly in the form of just the milestones. So your more detailed information that you provide, so basically at the end of the competition, as you get closer to the end, you'll have requested information to fill out your whole idea that you want to put in there. So imagine if the milestone was kind of in a little bit more detail, all of them one after the other. That's what the judges will get. The judges will be the only ones to see that, and we've explained to them, and they know very clearly that it's about mentoring you and guiding you. Those ideas belong to you, and it's not. There's no intellectual property that protects it. But again, it's not like we're asking you to present some IP or anything like that. You have to present your site and your concept design, what crops you're going to grow. So I think a right way to treat this is like an exchange of ideas between us and you to help you develop your idea and to incentivize you. Okay? If you have more detail, go ahead, Paul.
Can I add to that? So yeah, great explanation, Henry. But I really want to just make sure you guys understand, if you have some proprietary process that you have developed or you have an idea for, and you want to protect it through filing for patents down the road or any other type of intellectual property that you want to protect and you feel it's confidential, don't send it in. As Henry mentioned, this is an open platform. This is an open competition. We are here to mentor you guys and help you as much as possible. So all the judges, all the people from AVF who are involved, and have experience in vertical farming from all kinds of aspects, like Illumitex with lighting and grow technologies, and others who are on the jury. Great people with a lot of experience. We'll guide you. We'll share some information we can share. But again, if it's something that is very confidential and you don't want people to take advantage of looking at your confidential information, please don't send it in. Just don't. Just keep it to yourself, and you don't need to go into such a level of detail, in my opinion, Henry, correct me if I'm wrong, that you would need to disclose proprietary growing technique or proprietary lighting technology or something like that. We're not going to look at your vertical farm at such a granular level. This is still, again, a competition for a theoretical farm. We're going to look at making sure that this is a realistic project, it's feasible, that it's creative, it's exciting, and so forth, and meets all the minimum criteria, but don't send your confidential information.
Exactly. So we have another question here from Paul de Vries. Paul says, isn't it a bit much to ask us to find out about a site's legal status in just the next 4 days? As you pointed out, regulations and zoning aren't always clear, even to city regulators. Or can we edit/submit milestone 2 later on? Okay, so what we want to see for milestone 2, again, is that you have some justification for why you chose that site. You're not going to have to submit and prove in the milestone that that site is perfect for a vertical farm because of the zoning and the code. As we get through the competition further on, for the final deliverable, you might need to explain that a little bit more, but that's in May. The purpose of the milestones is to guide you and to encourage you to get your work done. The milestones themselves are not actually everything that you're going to be judged on. You're going to have another chance in May to finish your final application of your concept, and that's what the judges will see. So the milestones, again, are, besides milestone 1, they're optional, and they're ways for you to kind of keep your process moving. And also those things that you share, which are nothing's proprietary in there, or is it going to reveal your concept too much, we will use to kind of promote your project and to get you some public support for it. Okay, so yes, you will have time to
one more comment, Henry.
Yes.
Just one more comment. So the main focus should be that you guys understand the challenges related to your site and understand that you need to provide solutions. We're not expecting you to go and change building codes or zoning codes, but at least understand the challenge. So when you submit the site, make sure that you do research. Go on the website of your local municipality. They have zoning codes. Make a phone call quickly and say, okay, that site is located in an industrial area or in a residential area. I know I need to change the zoning. Okay, at least you know that. Or I know I need to hire a lawyer down the road if it's a real project to help me with this. At least you need to show us that you understand your site, that you have researched your site, and have basic information. If part of your program or your project is you're going to build a mixed-use, high-rise in downtown Manhattan, of course we all understand you need to get all kinds of approvals, but at least we need to know that you understand it. So that's how you're going to score points, if I can give you some advice, is by showing us that you've done your research and you have understanding. And 4 days is a lot of time to get information on real estate. Trust
me. Certainly. And a lot of those resources that Kelly mentioned, 596 acres for New York, but in your city there's surely a city database where you can look and click on a map and see what the zoning is.
Where's Paul located at? The gentleman who has a question, where's he from? Henry, do we know?
Paul de Vries, I'm not sure where Paul is from, didn't put it on there, but my guess is Dutch. So that's my guess, but we'll see. But yeah, we can look at some resources there, but I mean, pretty much every city has some kind of database where you can look at what each plot in the city is zoned for. That's how they keep the properties organized.
And we want to encourage you guys to go for this. I'm sorry if it's difficult, but that's the whole idea. We really want all of you to go through the pain of understanding your real estate. Why? Because we want you to be successful down the road. We want a lot of vertical farms to sprout all over the world. So unfortunately, it's part of your job. It's part of your process. If you guys want to develop a vertical farm, you have to understand your real estate.
Exactly. And and there's prizes to be won. For the team that demonstrates that they come up with a great concept, and really it's about that approach, proving that you really looked at the challenge thoroughly and justified the decisions you made. Okay, so we're going to keep it open for a little bit longer to get any questions. If you have questions after this webinar, you can email us at competition@vertical-farming.net. Keep an eye out on this YouTube video that will be live or will be broadcast after this. It'll remain on the AVF YouTube page rather, and we'll begin. You can also ask questions there, and we'll be answering as much as we can. We got another question coming up. Is it necessary to have 3 people on a team, or will 2 do? We really want to encourage teams at least 3 people large. So if you're looking for someone to join your team, there's a couple ways you can do that. You can share the opportunity on your Facebook. This question's from Ellie So. You can share the opportunity on your Facebook and get your friends to join that way. You can also share on the Association for Vertical Farming Facebook page that you're looking to have somebody else join your team. Okay, but yeah, we want to encourage you to get 3 people. It's going to really help you distribute the workload between you and keep each other responsible. Okay.
What we could also help with is through the AVF forum on the website, is if people are still missing someone, or if other people are alone and want to join a team that have already signed up, we can link them.
Okay. Gus is asking us what the format is for the final submission. So, Gus, we're still developing a little bit of the final submission form, but we know how it's going to work. So basically on that UNoodle platform where you've already kind of applied and entered, you'll have a submission form for the final deliverables. And really they're just going to be building out what you've done for the milestones in a little bit more detail. You're going to get that information very soon. Again, we're just trying to fill up the applicants and get everybody ready for the competition, and we're going to be here available for you through the next coming months to answer those questions. But there's going to be things like we're going to probably send you a template of an economic model that you have to enter in the prices for the crops in your area, to then develop that, and you have to submit that Excel back. So it'll be formats like that, or you have to upload your concept images, again, a layout, an elevation, and kind of a visual of it. So don't worry, stay tuned. We're going to give you more information about that, and it's not going to be on a separate platform. It'll be on your existing UNoodle platform. So one tip, though, is that as you're kind of submitting those documents or developing your idea, set up a Google Drive with your team or a Dropbox so you can have all those resources you develop along the way for that final submission. We've got another question. Hello, is it possible to replace, this is from Hannah, replace a screenshot of our site and make a PDF presentation? As far as I know, you can upload any formatted image on there. If you have an issue with that, Hannah, if you can't upload a PDF, it's no problem. If you want to put a PDF of the site, maybe you want to draw some things around it to show where certain buildings are, there's a market here or there's a school here, that's totally fine. If you have an issue with that on UNoodle, I'm going to check on that now, but you can always email your site selection, should it not work on UNoodle, to competition@vertical-farming.net, and it will be eligible. We will accept that. Paul?
Henry, just to add to that, guys, focus on creativity. Don't worry as much, in my opinion at least, about presentation. Of course, presentation needs to explain your concept. So those who are involved in architecture field or some kind of engineering understand, CAD systems and can do drawings or renderings. That's wonderful. But don't worry about that part. I think the visual presentation is important, of course, like to any business. But the merits of the presentation is the most important thing. The creativity and just making sure that you have done your homework. That again, this farm is a realistic vertical farm. This could be perceived as has a chance for funding, and it could be done. It could be feasible. That's what we should be focusing on. And especially if you're in a tight time frame or a smaller team and you don't have resources to provide lavish 3D renderings or computer animations or things like this. Don't be discouraged, please. Just focus on the merit of your design and of your business plan.
Okay. We got a question now, again here from Gus. Can we submit a design proposal report or videos? We'll look into the video thing, Gus, but definitely there's going to be a design proposal. So, when the judges get your application, your concept you provide, there's going to be a concept brief where you're going to explain what the angle is, what's the story of your vertical farm. That's going to be kind of the starting point for the judges to look into it. It might have the name on it. It might have what makes it special, or what the story is of that. but that's how you're going to kind of whet the taste buds of the judges right away. So yes, you can already start thinking about that. I think it won't be long. I think it'll probably be maybe 3 paragraphs max, but that'll be your opportunity to kind of sell the project before we get into the details of your justification. A correction from you. And I corrected that, Gus. We answered that question. So yes, about the videos and the proposal, we'll get that going. Okay, any other questions we have here? These are good questions. I really hope this webinar has been helpful and a good start. It's been a good learning experience for us. Our next webinar, Kelly, let's look at the date here again. I just got to open my timeline. So we have a full timeline of all the events on award.vertical-farming.net, and you can see there's a timeline icon there. But we're going to have a webinar again. Stay tuned on the Google Plus page, but it's going to be on crop selection on April 11th, and that's going to be when Rebecca Knight from Illumitex explains how do you choose the crops that you want to grow in your vertical farm, and what have we learned about the crops that respond to artificial lighting, and what do they need. So I don't see any more questions coming in here. Again, it's not the end. Oh, let me see this link, Kelly. Oh, thanks. You can ask us questions by emailing us, asking us questions on our various social media platforms. We really want to hear from you about your ideas about vertical farming, your questions about the competition, etc. But first steps first, make sure you finish milestone 1 with your team name, your team mission, and your team members. That's what you need to do to be eligible for the competition. We are going to be closing that at midnight PST on Monday, April 4th, which is tomorrow. Paul, did you want to say something? You seem to be
Yeah, Henry, I'm predicting what's going to happen. Just reading and hearing the questions that you're receiving today, I think that the applicants still have a lot of kind of organizational questions and process questions related to the submission. So I'm guessing what's going to happen, a lot of teams are still being formed, and a lot of ideas are still being formed and created. So I'm predicting that a week or 2 from now, some of you guys may have more questions about the design and site selection, more architect, zoning, building questions, contractor questions. So I think we may have to talk about this internally and open up maybe another opportunity down the road to make myself and others available. Because if you have good questions, a week from now, our goal is to help you guys as much as possible. And
yeah.
Here, so.
Thank you, Paul. We know you've got a lot going on, and really appreciate that. And I think that's super important. What we want right now is we want our entries to come in. We really want you to finish your applications. We've really had a lot come in, but we want to encourage really to beef that up as much as possible. That group who finished those entries, who finished that milestone 1, we plan to kind of mentor and guide you and answer your questions along the way. And there's really no reason why we can't do more of these webinars to answer those questions for you and along the way. So thanks, Paul, for offering your time with that.
I'll be more than happy to, Henry. Some other people help me. I work with phenomenal people. I work with Dixon. I work with Richard Stoner, Merle Jensen, and others early on. And they were great mentors. They spent their time, in many cases for free, mentoring me years ago on vertical farming. I just want to pay back, and I'm sure there are a lot of people who are willing to do that. So it's fun. It's super exciting. It's the first time we're doing it. Let's have the best award ever and the best process ever, and let's have fun with it. Guys, don't be discouraged. You're not going to get an F. You're not going to get fired from your job. You're not going to lose any money. It's all theoretical. So let's just have some fun and design amazing vertical farms, and we're available for you guys. That's the whole purpose.
Thanks, Paul. We just got one more question, and then I'm going to close it up. This question is from Brian about can I just submit my concept of the vertical farm, just the idea, meaning I do not have to find a real site to implement my project? The answer is no, Brian. We really do want you to think about the context. Mm-hmm. So you're going to start with the site. You're going to start with a location to put the vertical farm, and that's going to be milestone number 2. So enter your team information and then find a site to think about. Again, you can adjust that site along the way, but we want to see that you've already started to think about what kind of space you're going to put it. Where are you going to build this building?
But Henry, I'm sorry we're interactive here, but he may want to go backwards. I mean, that's fine. I mean, if he has a design for a farm, an idea that works, okay, now it's fantastic. Now go and find a site that's going to fit your design. That's all you need to do.
It's true.
Cities are big. We have a lot of cities around the world, and there are plenty of spaces to look at, so plenty of properties. So I'm pretty sure that you're going to find this site. If you have a great idea, it works for you, don't change your idea. Go and look for a site now that fits and allows you to implement your project.
And again, the milestones themselves are not mandatory apart from milestone 1. They're really here to help guide you through the process of developing your concept.
Exactly. I want to really thank Paul Hardej of Illumitex and Kelly Wilson. Thank you for your time today on this Sunday. Max Loessl, co-founder of the Association for Vertical Farming. And thanks to all of you for participating. It's really been great to have our first guidance webinar for this global competition. And we're just so excited to hear your ideas. So keep the questions coming and get your applications in and follow #AVFaward to join the conversation. Thanks, everyone.
Fantastic. Thanks for having us. Good luck, guys.
Good luck, guys.
Thank you.